to a Hope 1032 podcast.
The Hope Book Club with Katrina Rowe and Natasha Moore, because life's just better with a book.
Welcome to the Hope Book Club with Katrina Rowe and Natasha Moore from the Centre for Public Christianity. And today we're joined by Katrina Clifford from Robert Menzies College. In episode 36 of the Hope Book Club, we are solving some hot new mysteries. The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman is the sequel to the cracking comic crime novel The Thursday Murder Club. Set in a retirement village, our four crime-solving septuagenarians are drawn into a mystery involving diamonds, a violent killer, the mafia, and MI5. Magpie Murders is the story of a crime fiction editor who finds a real-life mystery hidden in the pages of the murder mystery she's editing. Magpie Murders pays homage to the golden age of crime fiction and weaves together two stories with a murder mystery within a murder mystery. And we have all read Apples Never Fall, the new novel from Liane Moriarty. When retired tennis coach Joy Delany goes missing, her four adult children start to question if they really knew what was going on in their parents' marriage. Is her disappearance related to the mysterious stranger who turned up on their doorstep last year? Or were things not quite as rosy as they seemed in the Delany household? Plus, we'll discuss our favourite books from 2021. But first, let's hear from The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman.
I was talking to a woman in Ruskin Court and she said she's on a diet, says Joyce, finishing her glass of wine. She's 82. Zimmerfranes make you look fat, says Ron. It's the thin legs. Why diet at 82? Says Joyce. What's a sausage roll going to do to you? Kill you? Well, join the queue. The Thursday Murder Club has concluded its latest meeting. This week they had been looking at the cold case of a Hastings newsagent who murdered an intruder with a crossbow. He'd been arrested, but then the media had got involved, and the consensus was that a man should be allowed to protect his own shop with a crossbow, for goodness sake. He walked free, head held high. A month or so later, police had discovered that the intruder was dating the newsagent's teenage daughter, and the newsagent had a long record of GBH, but at that point, everybody had moved on. It was 1975, after all, no CCTV and no one wanting to make a fuss. Do you think a dog might be good company? Asks Joyce. I thought I might either get a dog or join Instagram.
The Man Who Died Twice is the new mystery by Richard Osman, who wrote The Thursday Murder Club. If that book escaped your notice, it's a murder mystery set in a retirement village. Four septuagenarian friends meet each Thursday to explore cold cases in the library, just for fun. In this sequel, former spy Elizabeth has a ghost from her past turn up, which is surprising because he's supposed to be dead. Before you know it, the four friends are entangled with some dangerous criminals and the bodies start piling up. Natasha Moore is here from the Centre for Public Christianity. Hi, Natasha.
Hey, Katrina. How you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. So for those who haven't read the first book, can you tell us about the four main characters, Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim?
Yes, they are delightful. They're four friends who live in a quite upmarket retirement village in Kent. At the beginning of the first novel, three of the four are part of a club called the Thursday Murder Club, where they pretend to be having a club about something thoroughly boring, but actually what they do is they meet and they try to solve kind of old murders. Ibrahim is a psychiatrist, so he's very kind of methodical and organized and insightful into human nature. He's, a bit of a perfectionist and a little bit OCD. Ron is like a retired union leader. He's very bolshy. He's, very down to earth. Elizabeth is kind of a mystery. She's former MI5, MI6. She has done all the things and she can do anything. And she's very much the leader of the gang. And then at the start of the first book, Joyce joins them. They kind of invite her into their group. And Joyce is a retired nurse. And she seems very kind of like, oh, clucky, lovely, chatty old lady, but she's also kind of got a lot of steel in her. And she's very kind of unflappable. She, as a nurse for decades. And she is also one of the narrators of the book. So some of the chapters are told from her perspective, and we enjoy things like, on the one hand, her being a typical old lady who is a bit frustrated with her daughter, and her daughter doesn't want to come to see her. And in this book, she's kind of joining Instagram and can't figure out how to do direct messages. But on the other hand, they're kind of going around the country getting involved with quite high profile, high flying crime lords and so on. So it's a lot of fun.
You've really got me in with this series. We know these four love a good cold case, but how do they get dragged into this new mystery?
Well, this one really comes about because of Elizabeth's past kind of coming back to sort of bite her. So without giving too much away, we meet an ex-husband of Elizabeth's, who was also in the Secret Service, and who's a bit of a scamp, let's say. And he's gotten himself into some hot water, and he decides to drag Elizabeth into this scheme. And so we have all these kind of larger than life characters. There's kind of some local drug dealers. There's some international mafia. There's like a very wealthy, powerful, ruthless kind of middleman who works with all the arms dealers and criminals around the world. And there's like 20 million pounds worth of diamonds floating in the mix. And so Elizabeth kind of gets asked to assist in some ways in a sensitive situation. And so she, of course, there's a lot of lovely kind of, she just disregards what she's asked to do. So they're like, obviously this is confidential and you may tell no one. And she's like, well, obviously I'm not going to do that. So she just tells the three others. And then they also tell, Bogdan, who's the local Polish handyman who helps them out with stuff and is this great character. They also tell Donna and Chris, who are the local police officers who they kind of made friends with in the first one. So they're just very cavalier. Like they're old enough in a way that they're like, oh, we just don't care what you tell us to do and not do. We don't care about the rules.
Yep. Sounds like my dad. Were you... Don't tell him I said that. Were you more invested now that you kind of already have a relationship with these characters?
I mean, you get invested, I think, very quickly in the first one because they're so much fun and they both lean into the stereotypes about older people, but they also kind of buck them, and having that kind of inside view of their experience of getting older and being older while being light and fluffy and delightful and just hilarious on every page. It also doesn't shrink from some of the heavier themes, particularly of that time of life, to do with aging and loss and dementia and loneliness. And so I think, yes, having been through the first book with them, you're already invested. But even if you weren't, even if you just opened it at like this second book, I think you instantly just really enjoy these people. I think Richard Osman, the writer, has a real gift for making us care.
So you've already said it's funny, but some reviews I read said this one was even better than the first book. I was wondering if you agree with that, and what did you particularly like about this one?
I was thinking about this actually, because I am inclined to say that I liked this one even more. And I'm not sure if that's just because I only just read this one. And I'm like, maybe if I went back to the first one, I'd be like, oh, that's right, it's even better than I remember. But certainly it's not like, oh, the second one is, good too, but it's not the first. It's like, it's a step up in terms of mayhem, but like controlled mayhem, so that it's not as though it spins too much out of control. Everything gets brought back nicely. And actually, I think that probably is truer of this one than the first one, that the resolution of everything was more satisfying in this book. The actual murder mystery, if we can call it that, the actual, crime plot is resolved more convincingly in this one than the last one. But I suppose for both of them, it's the Englishness, it's the hilarity, it's the like charming characters and setting that is really the payoff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Next, a murder mystery within a murder mystery. What? Have I got your attention? Magpie Murders is a murder mystery by Anthony Horowitz, which pays homage to the golden age of crime writing. Crime fiction editor Susan Ryland is given the manuscript of Alan Conway's latest detective novel, but when she starts reading, she discovers another story hidden in the pages of the manuscript. Real-life jealousy, greed, ruthless ambition, and murder. Katrina Clifford is the Dean of Academics at Robert Menzies College. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Katrina.
I really love the premise of this book, and the reviews were very glowing of this book. Were you that impressed by this book?
It's incredibly fun. I think it's probably not the absolute best book I have ever read in my whole entire life, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it managed to hold my attention through sleep deprivation and crying babies and all the rest of it. And I think that's a pretty impressive feat for any book.
Yeah, sold, totally sold. Can you tell us more about Susan Ryland, our editor turned sleuth?
Sure. So Susan is an editor at a small publishing house in London, and her biggest client has been this man called Alan Conway, who's written this series of books featuring Detective Atticus Pund, who is a Poirot kind of figure, German rather than Belgian, but very much in the same sort of mould. He's just written and submitted the 9th book in the series, and she really loves the books, doesn't particularly like Alan Conway, the author, but appreciates kind of his skill. But she gets this final book and it's incomplete. And so she kind of starts off on this quest to find the missing chapters at the end. But at the same time, Alan Conway is found dead. It looks like he's committed suicide, but this doesn't sound right to Susan, and it doesn't sound right to a few of the people who knew Alan Conway. So she's now investigating 2 different mysteries. Firstly, where are the missing chapters? Secondly, was he murdered, and if so, by whom? And at the same time, we've got this kind of cliffhanger in the Atticus Pund book as well. So who killed the person who was murdered within the story, which all sounds much more complicated than it actually is. Horowitz does a really good job of kind of keeping it much less convoluted than I've just made it sound.
You've just blown my mind. There's basically 3 different mysteries going on here. So this plays with that whole vintage crime fiction thing, like with Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers and the like. Did you enjoy that aspect of the book?
I found that really fun. I love the Golden Age detective fiction concept and genre. I've read a lot of those books. And Susan Ryland has too. She's really familiar with that kind of, that sort of writing, that style of writing. All of the Atticus Pund mysteries are written in that vein. And he actually names people out of places in Agatha Christie novels and steals ideas from Agatha Christie's grandchild appears in one scene. Like, it's very much interconnected. But the funniest bits of it are when Susan really actively reflects on the difference between these murder mysteries that she's read and the murder mystery she finds herself in. And so she'll make little comments like, in a novel, if the author mentions a particular clue, you know that it's significant. But when you're investigating a murder in real life, how do you work out which of the clues are significant and which are just things that you happen to come across? There's one great line where she comments that, you know, someone had just said something to me that if I had realized would have unlocked the entire case. But of course, I'm only a normal person and I didn't realize how significant it was when they said it to me. So she very much sees herself in this role of amateur detective. And there's just these really funny moments as she kind of goes, well, but life just doesn't work out quite as simply and as clearly as an Agatha Christie novel does or a Dorothy Sayers novel does. And that's really good fun.
Yeah. Anthony Horowitz is a really in-demand writer. Like, he writes a lot of different stuff, kids' books, he writes for TV. He's well known for his murder mysteries now. Did you like his writing?
I did. One of the really interesting things about this book, because it's a novel within a novel, you actually get to read both books. And you'll see this really clearly. Flip open the book and just skim through it. You'll see it's very different. It's a different font, it's different typesetting, it's different pagination even. Like, you start from page 1 again halfway through the book. The 2 styles are very different. So you can tell that he's written half of it as Alan Conway writing the Atticus Pund novel, and then the other half as Susan Ryland writing her own mystery novel. And I think that's a really clever thing for an author to be able to pull off, that you can tell that you're reading kind of two different authors' works. So I really appreciated that. As I said before, it's really engaging. It's really easy to read. And I think that's important in a book like this, that you really just kind of want to keep on going through it. Like, I'm not reading it for literary style. Horowitz is not Jane Austen. It's more kind of in that Agatha Christie kind of vein. It's the writing is good enough to keep you engaged and keep you reading. It's not any better than it needs to be. But he's certainly very good at dropping those hints and keeping you interested, and helping me keep track of who's who and what's what and where are we up to and where are things going and who was that person. I found I didn't get lost too many times, which in a novel that has this degree of complexity is quite an achievement.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so were you satisfied with the ending? That's so important in a murder mystery with 3 different mysteries.
Yes, I was. I was satisfied with the ending of all 3 of them, actually. They really made sense in the end. The endings are connected to each other, so that was particularly satisfying. And I liked it enough to go on to read the sequel, which is called The Moonflower Murders. It's not quite as good as Magpie Murders, I don't think, but still was very engaging as well. And in that similar vein of, here's an Atticus Finch novel, and now here's a whole investigation that's surrounding this Atticus Finch novel. So I don't know if he's going to do 9 of them and somehow manage to involve Susan Ryland in 9 murder mysteries that all revolve around these books. That would be a massive accomplishment, I think, if he had the creativity to do that 9 times. But he's certainly pulled it off twice.
Awesome. Thanks, Katrina. So, look, they seem like 2 really great books, but as we are nearing the end of 2021 at the time of speaking, I thought it would be worth just throwing it out there. What have been your favourite books from this year? Maybe we can go with like a top 3, something like that. Do you want to go first, Natasha?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to choose, isn't it? I'm glad we're going top 3. I think top 1 would be too hard. Let's see here. I think in no particular order, I want to mention Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, which is a book that Katrina Clifford reviewed earlier this year on the show. And a friend had already lent it to me. It was sitting in my to be read pile, but that pile is like, very large. And after Katrina reviewed it, I was like, no, I really need to read this. And I absolutely loved it. And now I keep buying it for people and like foisting it on them. And they are all loving it as well. So that's the one with the spontaneously combusting children. They don't die when they are unharmed, when they just catch on fire.
It is important to point that out.
Yes, yeah. And I think I would go with Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood, which is kind of a memoir by she's a kind of Twitter poet and her writing is amazing. It's about kind of her upbringing and life, particularly with her pretty crazy father who's a Catholic priest. So he already had a family when he became a Catholic priest, which is kind of a loophole for most Catholic priests would not have children. Obviously.
Thanks for explaining that. Yep.
We
were all wondering.
Character, and I absolutely adored it. And then I think for the third one, let's go with classic, and Katrina is particularly going to enjoy this one. During lockdown, I read Persuasion with some friends, reread Jane Austen, and reading it with people, kind of a few chapters a week. And we like had a Facebook group and we commented, and it was just delightful. And you pick up all these things that you haven't before, even for people who've read it lots of times. And it was just a top reader 2021 because obviously she's just brilliant and everything she does is perfect. That's me.
What about you, Katrina?
Well, continuing the Austen theme, one of my favourites this year was Miss Austen by Jill Hornby, which is a book set a couple of decades after Jane Austen's death, and it focuses on her sister Cassandra, who's trying to reclaim some lost letters that Jane Austen wrote. A friend of theirs is moving and clearing out their house, and Cassandra's sure that there will be some letters from her sister somewhere hidden away in a drawer or a desk or somewhere. And so she invites herself to this person's house and then surreptitiously searches all the rooms looking for the letters. And it's great because eventually...
Yes.
Oh, sorry?
A novel, yeah?
It's a novel, yes.
Yeah,
it
cool.
didn't really happen as far as we know. That's helpful. This is a fictional account of Cassandra searching for letters that do not exist. But Hornby writes the letters and includes them in the narrative. And so you get kind of this dual timeline, Cassandra as an older woman looking back and reading the letters that her sister's written 30 or 40 years earlier. And so that was really fun. I also loved the Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, which I think we've talked about before.
Yeah, I read that one.
So
I really enjoyed that. I read it when it was very new, before it became so hot, which it is right now.
there you go. I read it after about 5 people told me I should, and I'm glad that I did. So the heroine of this book, her father is involved in writing the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, and she goes around and collects words that are not being included, usually women's words. Often they're kind of slang words, so they don't fit into the kind of masculine upper middle class vibe of the Oxford English Dictionary, but she collects them and preserves them. And in doing so preserves the stories of the women who have given her these words. So I really loved that. And then for something really fun, I read the new Kevin Kwan novel. So Kevin Kwan wrote Crazy Rich Asians a number of years ago. His new one's called Sex and Vanity, and it's a rewriting of E.M. Forster's classic novel, A Room with a View. I love A Room with a View, so I was really keen to read this. So it's set in the Chinese American community in New York, and it's got the same kind of glitz and glamour and crazy amounts of money that you have in Crazy Rich Asians, but with kind of a different storyline going on. So I read that all the way back in January, and it's still one of my favourite books for the year. It's just really good fun, a great summer, light-hearted, easy read, but really enjoyable. How about you, Katrina? What have you read this year?
Well, I'd have to mention A Song for the Road by Kathleen Bazzi. I've talked about that a few times, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But basically, it's about a woman who's lost her whole family, and she goes on a musical road trip across America. And it's about her coming to terms with her loss, but it's just done in a really beautiful, hopeful way. And the music is a really important part of the story too. It's just a delightful book to read. It's not too heavy, and I loved.
Okay, you've convinced me.
The expression of her
Catholic convinced me about
faith.
the Dictionary of Lost Words as well.
I've
been delaying reading that for a year.
I didn't love the ending of the Dictionary of Lost Words, I have to say. I would have given her a different ending if I'd written it. I think that was a really good ending you could have done. But, it is a really good book. The actual premise and the kind of the feminist aspect of understanding words was like very eye-opening. So maybe I should add that into my top 3, but maybe I read it last year. I can't remember.
No overlap.
Okay, so The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben was fantastic read about the way trees communicate with each other. Blew my mind. I loved that. And I have to say I was very impacted by A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. It again, just learning about the way the world is made, how things interact with each other, it left me with a really burning desire to want to learn more about how nature works and the importance of preserving the beautiful and delicate balance that life on Earth has, and the fact that I think we're just tipping that balance way too far. And if every single person read that book, I think we would live differently. Yeah.
Bringing the non-fiction, Katrina.
It's not like me, is it? I must confess they were audiobooks because I don't read non-fiction in a book.
It's okay. It counts.
Yeah.
You don't have to confess.
I know. They were really good. I recommend them. Now, before we
They
go.
were good on audio?
Yeah, really good on audio. I think for me that's the way to read that kind of. And David Attenborough reads his book, so you're hearing his voice. Good. Yeah, it's beautiful to just hear his voice. There's so much in that voice. But I thought just briefly before we wrap up, we all read Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty for our Hope Book Club live event, which was so much fun. So I'll give a skinny wrap of my sort of take on it. For those who haven't heard us talking about it, Stan and Joy Delany are 2 retired tennis coaches who have a great life together, but they never quite made it. They had one super successful player, Harry Haddad, who has won Wimbledon, but sadly Harry left Stan's coaching and moved to Melbourne. And Stan never quite got over losing his star pupil. Meanwhile, the 4 Delany children have all moved out of home, but all of them never really made it to the top of their tennis careers for different reasons, and they're all having problems of their own. So there's eldest child Amy, who is the, inverted commas, problem child. She's moved around a lot. She tries lots of different jobs. She's had lots of different boyfriends. There's Troy, the big shot investor who lives between Sydney and New York and just wants his dad to acknowledge his success, even though it's not in tennis. Logan is so relaxed about his life that he doesn't understand why his gorgeous girlfriend Indira left him. And Brooke is the daddy's girl working hard to make her physiotherapy business a success. Joy is proud of all her kids, but all she really wants is a grandchild, and it doesn't look like she's going to get one. Into all this comes a stranger, Savannah, who turns up on their door and makes herself at home at Joy and Stan's house, much to the consternation of her kids. And then when Joy goes missing after a fight with Stan, the children have to solve the mystery. Does Joy's disappearance have anything to do with Savannah? Or is it possible that Stan's family history of domestic violence has come back to haunt him? So, yeah, I loved this family dynamic in this book, the mystery, the insights into the world of tennis. I enjoyed learning about the empty nester experience and the different personalities of the different kids. And I think Liane Moriarty wrote this beautifully, and I thought the ending wrapped up really well. What did you guys think?
I mean, we've talked about, a few things in our book club and stuff with this, but we didn't really talk about the title. Hey,
no, we
Apples
didn't.
Never Fall.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I guess it sort of implies a certain thing in terms of relating to the mystery without wanting to give too much away, but that sort of title kind of gives you a certain impression as to what the book might be about. And I think, but it actually has kind of a far broader meaning.
About family.
About family, yeah.
How the tentacles of things reach into the next generation. And yeah, totally. Because I think I heard an interview with her where apparently she started it from a writing prompt from her sister, which was this image that the book starts with of like a bike by the side of the road with apples fallen from the basket. And that was kind of the germ of the whole thing.
The apples never fall. That image, it wasn't a huge part of the book, but I wondered how much it inspired the constant mention of their famous apple crumble. Were they connected?
Yeah, it's one of those phrases that lends itself to both a literal and a metaphorical meaning, right? Because it's got that kind of intergenerational metaphorical sense to it, but also a very literal, in the opening introduction, apples fall out of a basket and they're constantly making and eating apple crumble the whole way through. And it's a real family tradition that they're making and eating apple crumble the whole way through. And so I found that amusing, almost laugh out loud every time apples were mentioned in the book. And that only worked because it was the title of the book, right? Otherwise it would have just been
you would never make the apples don't fall far from the tree connection if it were not that it would call that. That's true.
Probably the only thing I didn't believe in the whole book was the opening scene when they were at a cafe and they all order apple crumble at breakfast time. And I was like, how many places would serve you apple crumble at breakfast?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was like, no, I'm not buying it. If they had
been
been out
all day breakfast, but all day dessert is
not a thing. And I think if they'd been somewhere in the evening and they were going out for dessert, then it would have been fine. But for me, that was the only part of the book.
Although
I
suppose if it's
really?
one of the if there's an apple crumble in the cafe, glass cabinet.
Oh
thing,
yes,
that they could just cut you a slice. Could they do that? Can you do that with crumble?
Well, that's not really crumble. That's a pie. Unless you've got the crumbly top, then I guess. But apple crumble doesn't have the pie base, does it?
We're addressing the important issues here.
You can see, in some of those display cases that, they'll do it with creme brulee as well, right? It's just a little ramekin that has the dessert in it, and you just get one of them out of the case. But I think it needed to be at breakfast time so that it would feel really weird, right?
Yes, and you were going.
Otherwise, it'd say there's nothing weird about everybody eating apple crumble for dessert, but there is something really weird about 4 siblings coming into a cafe and all having apple crumble for breakfast. There's something significant about that I don't understand yet. And kind of, resonates through the book in a way that it wouldn't have if it was at a more normal time of day, I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
There is a wide array of cafes in Sydney. I'm sure some of them.
You're right.
I'm sure if we tried, we would find one that would give us apple crumble for breakfast.
Okay. That is a challenge. Let's do that. Let's have a live book club recording in a cafe with apple crumble. No. Look,
anybody works in a cafe out there that serves apple crumble for breakfast, let us know. We'll come
your
visit.
local cafe. Yeah,
I make a great apple crumble. I'll make you one. Anyway.
For breakfast.
Yeah, for breakfast. I'll have to make it the night before because I don't get up that early. But anyway, it was a great book. And I know some people haven't loved this book as much as her other books, but I really enjoyed it. I loved the sibling dynamics. For me, that just made the book as one of 4 kids. I just think she nailed that. There was so much to enjoy about this book. I loved the character of Joy. We all know a Joy, I think. To me, I just felt that she was really authentic character.
And a bit like in the Thursday Murder Club Man Who Died Twice series, like that kind of perspective of the older generation and that being retired and being kind of written off a bit. And Joy is like at a loose end, empty nester, no grandchildren, doesn't really know what to do with herself, starts listening to podcasts and calling her children who are a bit like, why are you calling me? And seeing that from both perspectives, from both generations. I feel like the moving around perspective really worked well in this book.
Yeah, I really loved the way Moriarty did that. It kind of showed how Joy sees her children's lives and how the children see their parents' lives and how they all see their own lives. And so you kind of get this multiple perspective on every character, which I thought made it a really richly observed book.
And how they are and aren't the most reliable narrators of their own lives.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting.
They don't see themselves clearly or each other clearly, but you build up a picture of who they all truly are from seeing each of them from so many different angles.
So that was very cleverly done, that sort of gap between their perception of themselves and each other, and then how that was just slightly different. That was very clever how the different siblings had just a slightly different perspective on those things. But I think the other thing I think we have to mention if we're talking about this book is the portrayal of a marriage and the way in a marriage, the same marriage could be viewed from different angles, could be seen as a great marriage or a difficult marriage in different contexts, that there were genuine issues.
And both would be true.
Both were true. There were genuine issues, but there was genuine love. There were highs and lows. There was a real genuine commitment between these two. I think that was the thing I really enjoyed about the book, is that they were both very committed to their marriage, although they had different frustrations within it. And there were certain
real betrayals.
Well. There were betrayals, but they were well-meaning betrayals. Really, they weren't vindictive. They weren't vindictive betrayals. They weren't nasty to each other, but they were bits of misunderstanding, and there were definitely issues within the marriage, but there was something good there too.
Big ups and downs.
And when seen against the contrast of the breaking down of Logan and Troy and Brooke's relationships, like they've all recently had relationships that have gone awry. It's really interesting to kind of see how does a good relationship bounce back from a stress or a tragedy or some sort of disaster, and that what causes it to break entirely.
And with the disappearance of their mum and the possibility that their dad killed her, which they try not to entertain, but then sort of as time goes on and not so sure, that suddenly they start analysing their parents' marriage, which has just always been backdrop for them, and they've always made assumptions about, and they're like, oh, hang on, do we know what this is? Or I've assumed this is a good relationship, and how that has kind of affected how they think about their own relationships, and many layers of complexity.
There is a lot in this book, isn't there? There's a lot. I think it's well worth a read, and a great holiday read as well.
Agreed.
All right. I
Absolutely.
think we're done for 2021, girls.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being part of this little podcast, guys. It's been great. Thanks for branching out with me in the live event. That was a lot of fun. I'm not a big risk taker, so, that was a big step for me to do that. And thanks for making that work. That was really fun. Let's do that again in 2022. And have a great Christmas, guys. And Happy New Year.
You too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed this edition of the Hope Book Club, let your friends know about it. In this episode, we reviewed The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman, Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz, and Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. And thanks for listening to the Hope Book Club, because life's just better with a book.
1032. Thanks for listening.